Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Obsidian Paranormal Podcast. I'm Myron.
And I'm Jillian.
And on our last episode, we told you a little bit about who we are and what we do. On this episode, we'll be discussing our first investigation. And this one was at a private residence in Waterbury, Connecticut.
I know you're probably all going to get sick of me saying this, but I absolutely loved this investigation. Not only because it was my first ever official paranormal investigation, but also because I lived there and the property was owned by, spoiler alert, future teammate and my sister from another Mr. Griffin.
And what were some of the experiences that you guys had?
Well, it was a weird time when we were in our 20s. So the housing market was ripe for real estate investment, and Griffin and her mom had decided to invest in this property. I had moved away and had a family emergency that required that I move back to Connecticut very quickly. So Griffin, being my best friend, let me couch surf with her as long as I helped her with the renovations. So I didn't know anything about renovating, so she had me doing things like scraping wallpaper. I can't tell you how much wallpaper I scraped in that house. And so while I'm doing all this wallpaper scraping, Griffin is doing the heavy lifting, and she's, showing me some tips and tricks along the way. So, but mainly my days were spent scraping so much wallpaper. So one day, Griffin was doing construction, breaking down a wall, and she finds this weird children's toy. It's like a finger puppet. And I remember it was pink. And she showed it to me and I was just like, okay, that's kind of weird. And we went about our day. So the next day we come back and that toy is in the middle of this construction zone, like the middle of the floor. She looks at me. Did you do that? I look at her like, did you do that? And we had this like moment of like, did we forget and like just drop this toy somewhere? So that night we made sure that we put the toy somewhere. And we told each other, okay, we're putting the toy on the windowsill next to the bathroom. Sure enough, the next day we come back. The toy is in the middle of the floor in what would be the living room. And this went on and on, where no matter where we would leave the toy the next day, we would find it on the floor as if we'd like walked in and a child had been playing with it. So we called her mom like, hey, are you going into this property and like moving things around? And she's just like, no, I haven't been there in weeks. So we could not figure out who or what was playing with this toy.
Did anyone else have access to the property?
No, the only people who had keys were Griffin and her mom. And Griffin and I lived together. I knew when she left, and her mom wouldn't have any motivation to lie to us about that, or wasn't like a prankster, so she wouldn't have gone any extra effort to move a toy. She just wasn't really like that.
Did you set up any cameras or anything?
Okay, not to sound ancient, but we didn't even have cameras on our cell phones. I had the rinky-dink Nokia where I could play Snake on it, and we were in our 20s, so there was no expendable income for anything like a security system. It was just out of our price range. So no, we had no way to set up any surveillance, but it was a 2-family house. And in the middle of us doing the construction, they did move in a tenant into the first floor unit, and they attested to the fact that there was no corporeal person that was coming and going, and they didn't hear any footsteps on their level. But that does lead into some interesting footsteps that we heard later on. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just finish up with the final thing with that toy that creeped us out. So it was odd that the toy kept on moving. But Griffin would always wear steel-toed work boots. And if you've ever worn steel-toed boots, you know that there's no extra room in those boots. So we had finished up a day, me scraping wallpaper, Griffin doing other construction, and had made sure we noted where the toy was. we drove across town to the condo where we live, and she took off her work boots, and we made a sandwich, came back, and there in her work boot was the toy. She blames me to this day. She was just like, you did that. You put it into your pocket. You snuck it in here. And absolutely not. I would not be perpetuating a prank like this for that many years. And I was just beyond freaked out by that because there's no room. It couldn't have fallen in her shoe. There was no room in her shoe.
And she wouldn't have taken her shoe off while she was doing work, right?
No, the construction zone was covered in dust and nails and debris, and there would be no reason to take the shoe off. And even if it had fallen into her shoe,
she would have felt it when she was walking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to this day, I have no idea how that toy followed us home. And I don't know where that toy is anymore because I think, honestly, I think one of us threw it out the window at some point because it was just so creepy.
So if you live in the Waterbury, Connecticut area and you happen to come across this pink puppet toy and have had experiences of your own, this may be a good time to contact us at obsidianparanormal@gmail.com. Well, obviously getting rid of the toy didn't stop the activity. So what happened next?
Well, at that point, Griffin's mom got an offer on the condo that we were living in. So we had to very quickly pack up and move into the construction zone. And odd things started happening there. Like the kitchen cabinet doors would stay open. Like if you remember in Poltergeist, where she walks in and like all of the cabinet doors are open and then all of the chairs are stacked up on one another. We never had the chairs stack up on one another, but we definitely had all of the cabinet doors open at once and every single drawer pulled out. One incident that I still can't explain is we have a friend who would come over, just to help out, watch movies, hang out. And he had gotten a new car and he was so proud of his new car. So he drives it up and we're oohing and eyeing at the new car. And when we're sitting watching a movie, all of a sudden his car alarm starts going off. And he's like, oh man, I can't figure out how to turn off the car alarm. And says, I got to call the dealership in the morning. So he calls the dealership the next morning and then he calls us and tells us, guys, there's no alarm in this brand new car. And he had that car for years and it never made any other car alarm sound other than that first night that he drove it over to this property.
Well, how long was it going off?
Oh, it was going off for like a good 2-3 minutes. We were worried that his battery was going to die.
And it just stopped on its own?
It just stopped on its own.
And it was definitely his car? Couldn't have been like a neighbor's car?
No, we saw the lights blinking, the interior lights blinking with the headlights blinking and the horn sound coming directly from his car. But I wanted to get back to the thing I mentioned earlier about the footsteps. So fast forward to a few years and Griffin was living at another property and I was renting from her, and her construction guy would come in during the day while I was at work and she was renovating the attic to be another bedroom. My bedroom was directly under the construction zone and I kept on hearing heavy boot steps almost every night. And I would call Griffin and be like, hey, is your construction guy still here? And she'd be like, no, he left hours ago. And I'm like, okay, well, I think somebody might have gotten into the property because I hear somebody walking around upstairs. I'm going to go up to the attic and check it out. And it would floor me, literally floor me, when she said to me, you can't go up to the attic, Jillian, because there is no floor. So there were like I guess they're called like joists or struts. I don't know anything about construction, but there was like the framework for the floor. And then I had a ceiling that was like underneath the floor joist, but there was physically no floor in the attic. And I was hearing heavy boot steps walking, like pacing every single night.
Well, that must have been a relief. At least you knew it wasn't somebody breaking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've told this to you many times. I am way more afraid of people than I am of any spirits. But I remember telling you about all of these experiences. And then in 2020, Griffin decided to take advantage of the housing market boom, and her tenants had moved out, and she listed the property for sale and it was empty.
It was during COVID, so there wasn't a lot to do.
Yeah, exactly. It was a perfect time for us to see if we could capture any of these experiences or communicate with any of the entities that were still there. So now that I've told you about the claims of activity, we should probably get into the investigation.
Yeah, sounds good. We do research on the locations that we investigate. This particular one, all we were able to find on it was that it was built in 1904.
It makes sense that there wasn't a lot of history. I know that Griffin bought this from the bank, so she had never even met the previous owners when she first bought it. So that jives. We arrived on site at 10 p.m. and immediately started setting up. The investigation officially started at 11 p.m.
The first rooms we investigated were the kitchen and the bathroom.
That was significant for me because my father had passed away in 2008. Before he passed away, he had gifted me a kitty named Sigan. And one night there was a horrible snowstorm and I wasn't able to make it home. And during the time that I was away, Sigan unfortunately passed away. And I found his body in the doorway between the kitchen and the bathroom. I was really hoping that I would be able to make contact with Sigan. When I came home, there was still plenty of food and water for the cats, and I have no idea what caused him to pass away so suddenly. I was really hoping that this investigation could have given me a little bit of closure on that.
Well, we did think we got his name on the spirit box. And what I'm referring to by spirit box is basically it's like a small radio, and it scans through radio frequencies extremely fast to the point where you may get broken up words, or it's mostly white noise. So if you're getting a full sentence, especially if it's in the same voice, chances are you may be getting some kind of a response. Not always the case, but a lot of the time it is. And at this particular investigation in that doorway, we got what to us sounds like his name.
That was so comforting to me when you played me back that evidence, because it provided that closure that I was seeking. And if any of you want to listen to that spirit box session, we do have that video up on our YouTube page, and let us know what you think. See if you hear what we hear, because we're always open for other opinions.
And in those rooms, other than that, we really didn't catch too much. So then we took the investigation into the living room.
Yeah. And this is really when we laid the groundwork for the fact that we love to experiment and try new things on investigations, because I decided, since I had lived in this place, I had practiced magic in this place, that it would be a great idea to cast a magical circle and have a ritual with the intent to try to communicate and open the doors for communication to the other side through this ritual.
And we had 3 voice recorders set up. One was inside the circle, one was on the outside of the circle, and one was upstairs in the attic.
And the one in the attic provided some evidence that both you and I have different opinions on. So Myron, being very pragmatic and logical, thinks that the guest that we had with us might have been the person that we're hearing on that particular voice recorder.
Although neither of us actually remember her making the sounds that we hear. But
right. I think that the voice recorder in the attic may have picked up the voice of a child that I think is a child that used to play with the toy. We'll eventually get that up on our website to see what you guys think about that. But it's something that he and I still to this day debate, which is what makes us great investigators, is that we both bring different things to the table and different opinions.
And we really didn't catch anything else in that room. But I am glad that you brought up us having a guest, because that leads into the next possible clip that we had, which was upstairs in the attic, which is where we went next.
I don't envy you. You had 2 people with you who had never been on an investigation before. And you did such a great job in leading us and teaching us. And I really think even though we had never been on an investigation like this before. You led us into the correct direction.
No, you guys did great. I didn't really have to guide you with anything, really.
Well, there was a few times I know that I personally whispered and our guest whispered. And if you've never been on an investigation for paranormal before, one of the ways that spirits come through is as whispered voices on voice recording equipment. So it's very important that the corporeal people on the investigation don't whisper so that we know later on what's evidence and what's human.
And if you do whisper, it's important to say that you just whispered.
Exactly. And so that leads us into our next piece of evidence.
We were upstairs in the attic, and you were sitting quietly to see if you can sense anything psychically. And the guest and I had gone into the closet storage room area where I was taking pictures, and she had asked if I took a picture of something.
Yeah, but she whispered the question, which makes perfect sense because in any other situation, we had me over in the other room, sitting quietly, trying to psychically tune in, and we're in the dark. Everybody's inclination is to whisper. But what was interesting was what happened after her whisper.
Yeah, you hear what sounds like something repeating my response after I said it. And I know that that wasn't me that said it twice.
You and I agree on this one, that this was evidence of a mimic. It was the first time I ever experienced a mimic. Had you ever experienced a mimic before?
Yeah, I've experienced mimics multiple times.
Can you explain to our listeners what a mimic is?
Yeah, what we believe a mimic is a spirit or entity or whatever they are doing an impression of a living person. Like it's a lot of the time a voice. I think some people believe they've seen a person that's alive that's not actually them.
And spoiler alert, this isn't going to be the last time that we encounter a mimic on our investigations. That video is up on our YouTube channel as well. Again, check it out. Let us know what you think. You can email us at obsidianparanormal@gmail.com. We're hoping that later on down the road, we'll have some special episodes for you where we do read your listener mail online. This was such a great first investigation for me because I really felt like I was able to say goodbye to the house and have closure, especially with the evidence that we got with Sigan's name. Do you remember anything else of significance that we didn't cover?
No, nothing off the top of my head. I know the investigation went until around 5 a.m. Then we just packed up.
Yeah, it was great. And in our introductory episode, we talked to you guys about how we may have some aha moments for you. During the recording of this episode, an aha moment just occurred. I spoke earlier about how my father had passed away in 2008. I just looked at the date, and this is the anniversary day of when he died. And we're recording an episode with the cat that was so significant to him and me. So I feel like maybe we have my father's blessing.
Yeah, I think we do. And we'd like to thank all of you for listening.
And also remind everybody to please like, follow, and subscribe. You can find us online at obsidianparanormal.org or wherever you get your social media. We're Obsidian Paranormal.
And our next episode will be about the Salem Witchboard Museum investigation that we did in Salem, Massachusetts.
And until then, stay spooky.